You ever unlock your phone, stare at it for a second, then realize you have absolutely no idea why you picked it up? So you lock it, put it down. 10 seconds later, you pick it up again. Not because you needed anything, because somewhere between unlocking it, your mind wandered into a conversation that isn't even happening. Maybe it's an argument. Maybe it's someone finally apologizing. Maybe it's you explaining something for the 100th time to someone who stopped listening years ago. Then, just like that, you're back. Your phone's still in your hand, the screen's gone dark, and for a second, you can't even remember where you disappeared to. Most people would call that getting distracted. I don't think that's what it is, because distractions don't usually feel comforting. This does. There's something strangely familiar about slipping into your own head, almost like walking into a room where nobody interrupts you, nobody rolls their eyes, nobody tells you you're overreacting. You finally get to finish the sentence. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. The people who do this the most usually don't think it's a problem. Why would they? From the inside, it doesn't feel like you're losing focus. It feels like you're finding relief. That's a completely different thing. Because if something gives you relief, your brain remembers. It doesn't care whether that relief came from a real conversation or one that only happened in your imagination. Relief is relief, and brains are incredibly good at remembering where they found it. That's when something quietly changes. You stop visiting that place, and without realizing it, you start living there. Not all day, not at first, just little moments, waiting in line, sitting in traffic, brushing your teeth, walking the dog. Your body stays where it is, but your mind keeps taking the same exit. Now here's what's interesting. Most people think this happens because someone has a big imagination. I don't buy that. Some of the most creative people you'll ever meet don't do this. And some people who swear they don't have a creative bone in their body can disappear into their thoughts for an hour without noticing. So, maybe creativity isn't the thing. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's that your mind found one place where everything finally made sense, where conversations actually finished, where people understood what you meant, where you didn't have to wonder if you said the wrong thing. Real life rarely gives us that. Your mind can, every single time. And that's exactly why it becomes so hard to leave. And here's where it gets even stranger. Think about the conversations you replay. They're almost never the good ones. You don't spend 20 minutes reliving the time someone complimented you. Your brain doesn't keep bringing back the day everything went exactly the way you hoped. No, it brings back the one sentence you wish you had said differently, the look on their face, the text you never answered, the moment you went quiet when you really wanted to speak. Have you ever wondered why? Why your mind keeps choosing the same memory, like it's convinced there's still something left to fix? It's because your brain hates unfinished things, not unfinished tasks, unfinished feelings. There's a difference. A sink full of dishes might annoy you, but an unanswered question, a conversation that ended too soon, someone who never understood what you were trying to say, your brain can carry that for years. So it does something incredibly clever. It opens the conversation again, not in real life, inside your head, where nobody can interrupt, where you finally get to say the thing you've been carrying around for months, maybe years. And for a few minutes, it actually works. You feel lighter, calmer, like something finally settled. But then, the conversation ends. You look up. Nothing changed. That person still doesn't know how you feel. The phone never rang. The apology never came. Your life is exactly where you left it, except now. Your brain knows something. It knows where relief lives. And the next time life feels heavy, guess where it wants to go? Not because it's trying to trap you, because it's trying to help you. Brains repeat what works. They don't stop to ask whether it solves the problem forever, only whether it made you feel better, even for a minute. That's why this can become so automatic. You don't decide to drift away. You just notice you're already there. It's almost like missing the exit on a highway. 1 second, you're paying attention. The next, you're 5 miles down the road, wondering where you disappeared. Now here's the part I wish more people understood. This isn't a lack of discipline, and it isn't because you're lazy. It's because your mind found a shortcut to relief before it found a path to healing. Those are not the same thing. A shortcut gets you out of pain. A path changes where you're going. And if nobody ever showed you the path, of course your brain kept taking the shortcut. What else was it supposed to do? Maybe nobody ever taught you how to say, "That hurt." Maybe you learned that keeping the peace was safer than telling the truth. Maybe every time you tried to explain yourself, you ended up feeling even more alone. So your mind adapted, quietly, without asking for permission. It built a place where your voice could finally finish the sentence. When you look at it like that, it stops looking like weakness. It starts looking like survival. And survival is incredibly persuasive. Because once your brain believes something kept you safe, it doesn't like giving it up, even after you don't need it anymore. And this is where people usually get it wrong. They think the problem is the imagination. They think the goal is to shut it down, to become someone who never drifts, someone who is always present, always focused, always connected to the real world. But that misses something important, because your imagination was never the enemy. It was the place you went when something else felt too difficult. Think about that. A child doesn't build a fort under the stairs because they hate the house. They build it because they need somewhere that feels like theirs, somewhere they can control, somewhere they can breathe. And sometimes, the mind does the same thing. It builds a room, not with wood, not with blankets, with memories, with conversations, with entire versions of life that never happened, but somehow still feel real. And the strange thing is, the people who create these worlds are often incredibly emotionally aware. They notice small things, a change in someone's voice, a look that lasts half a second too long, a message that feels slightly different than usual. Their minds are constantly collecting information, constantly asking, what did that mean? Did I say the wrong thing? Do they actually care? And when you notice everything, you feel everything, which sounds like a gift, until you realize a sensitive mind doesn't just feel joy more deeply, it also feels uncertainty more deeply. Rejection, embarrassment, loneliness, the feeling of not being understood. Those things don't just pass through, they stay, they knock, they ask to be solved. So the mind does what minds do. It tries to create an answer. Maybe that's why your imaginary conversations are so detailed. Maybe that's why you don't just imagine what happened. You imagine what could have happened. The apology, the explanation, the moment where they finally look at you and say, I understand now. Because that moment isn't really about them. It's about a feeling you've been searching for, being seen, being chosen, being enough. And this is the part that changes everything. The fantasy was never about creating a perfect world. It was about creating a world where you didn't have to constantly prove you belonged. That's a very different thing. Because once you understand that, you stop asking, why can't I just stop doing this? And you start asking, what is this giving me that I don't know how to ask for? That question is much harder, but it's also much more useful because your mind is rarely random. The things it repeats, the stories it creates, the moments it keeps returning to, they are usually pointing somewhere, not toward what's wrong with you, toward what's missing. And maybe this is the hardest part to accept. The thing you want to get rid of might be the thing that helped you get through something. Not forever, not perfectly, but enough. Enough that your brain remembered. Because your brain doesn't keep habits because they make sense. It keeps them because, at some point, they worked. That's why people feel so conflicted about this. They don't just want to stop. Part of them doesn't want to stop. Because that little world inside their head has been there. During boring days, lonely nights, awkward moments, times when they felt invisible. It has been the one place where they could always go. No waiting, no rejection, no wondering if they were too much, no fear of saying the wrong thing, just a place where they belonged. And losing that can feel strangely painful, even if you know it's taken time away from your life. Because you aren't just giving up a habit, you're saying goodbye to a place that has kept you company. Nobody talks about that part. They talk about distraction. They talk about wasted time. They talk about productivity. But they don't talk about the relationship you can build with a world that only exists inside your mind. Because sometimes, your imagination knows you better than the people around you do. It remembers the things you never said, the feelings you never explained, the version of yourself you wanted someone else to notice. And maybe that's why coming back to reality can feel so uncomfortable, because reality is messy. People misunderstand you. Conversations end badly. You don't always get the apology. You don't always get the ending you deserved. Real life does not follow a script, and your mind does, every time. But here's the thing. The answer isn't to destroy that inner world. That would be like tearing down a house because you built it during a storm. The question is, why did you need the house? What was happening outside that made you need somewhere else to go? Because the goal isn't to become someone who never escapes. The goal is to build a life you don't constantly need to escape from. A life where the things you imagine, connection, understanding, being heard, feeling valued, slowly start becoming things you experience, not just things you rehearse. And that takes time, because if your mind spent years learning, the safest place is inside. It won't suddenly believe. The safest place is outside. You have to show it, little by little. A conversation where you say what you actually feel. A moment where you let someone see the real version of you. A time where you stay present, even when it feels uncomfortable. Those moments seem small, but your brain is paying attention. It's learning something new. It's learning. Maybe I don't always have to disappear to feel okay. Maybe I can bring some of that safety with me. And maybe, after hearing all of this, you realize something. You weren't actually trying to disappear. Not really. You were trying to find somewhere where you could finally be fully yourself. Because there are parts of you that only came out in that private world. The thoughtful version of you, the confident version of you, the version that knew exactly what to say, the version that didn't apologize for taking up space. And maybe the saddest part isn't that you created that version. Maybe the saddest part is that somewhere along the way, you decided that version of you was only safe there, only safe in your imagination, only safe when nobody else could see it. Think about that. You built entire conversations, entire relationships, entire futures inside your own mind. That means something. It means there is a part of you that is still trying to connect, still trying to express something, still trying to be known. A person who feels nothing doesn't create worlds. A person who has nothing to say doesn't rehearse conversations for hours. The imagination is not proof that you're disconnected. Sometimes it's proof that there's a lot inside you that has never had the right place to go. And maybe the goal was never to become someone who stops imagining. Maybe the goal is to become someone who finally feels safe enough to be that person outside of your own head. Because the same mind that created a world where you felt understood can help you build moments in this world where you actually are. Slowly, awkwardly, imperfectly, but for real. So if you recognized yourself in this, I hope you don't look back at all those hours and only see wasted time. Maybe some of those moments were your mind's way of saying, something in me still needs to be heard. Maybe it was trying to protect a part of you that felt unseen. Maybe it was carrying emotions you didn't have anywhere else to put. And maybe the next step isn't fighting that part of yourself. Maybe it's finally listening to it. Because your inner world was never the proof that something was wrong with you. It was proof that something inside you was still alive, still creative, still reaching, still hoping. And maybe now, it doesn't need to stay hidden anymore.